Hello, everyone. Today is our first session for the midterms. I'm sorry if I'm not able to meet you for a synchronous session this week because of the different issues that we're experiencing right now. So there are times when we don't have enough bandwidth, and it's so difficult to hold classes over the phone. I tried with one of my classes, but it was really difficult. That was just for a major subject with a few students, so I cannot imagine doing it for a class with as much as 40 and going over it for a whole period, and I'll be sharing some screens. So let's have the discussion today in a synchronous. And as I have discussed with you in the GC, kindly go over this video, and then on a piece of paper, on your Microsoft Word or an external tool, just take notes. You may use your bullets, or you may do your numberings, or just jot down whatever you are, just whatever I'm talking about, and you're going to be submitting that in lieu of your attendance for today. Okay, so for our session today, this is going to be a review first of what we have tackled for the first grading. And also, as you can see here, we've started with week one, which is an art start. We've discussed here what is and what is not art for you. I asked you to turn in your outputs, and then you watched Elizabeth Gilbert's talk about your elusive creative genius, where we discovered the importance of creativity and imagination and how we handle them or how we understand them. The second week, we went to aesthetics. So for aesthetics, we discussed what is art. We've used ideas or concepts brought about by the Mona Lisa, Van Gogh, and then I discussed with you the the amphora. So we've been discussing in here what are the different modes of art, what are the different art forms that came out as a way of revolution, or to politicize, or to go against particular standards of beauty that we don't really agree with. So like street art, the ready-mades by Duchamp and other artists. Of course, these are all very important things to consider, because even if they are not traditionally what we consider to be art, they actually give us a different perspective about how do we understand and how do we look at different art forms, even in different generations that came after it. So maybe there was a time that they did not really consider drip to become an art form. Maybe there are some people who do not like geometric shapes or cubism to be an art form, but these are technically part of aesthetics, and these are new ideas or new modalities of art that came out eventually later on. And then we discussed the categories of art, which was like the bulk of your first grading, because you also produced your artworks and your outputs and your projects based on this one. So the first one is your we've discussed, or we jump started that with the discussion of performance art. So I talked to you about Abramovic, which is a very famous performance artwork, which is Rhythm Zero. And then I also introduced you to the different categories of art, and you created your infographics and your infographics and your slides based on this. I would just like to reiterate some major comments. Maybe some of you, this is a paired work, so I hope that next time, no, I hope that both of you listen to the lectures, or if there are times when you do not understand the discussion, you can always go back to the video that was recorded beforehand, and you can base the instructions from there if you didn't take it already from the synchronous session. So I told you in the infographic, you're supposed to have included the elements of art. Not everyone, unfortunately, did that. So most of you just researched trivia or information about it, but not a lot of you really applied what I asked you to do, which is to go back to the elements. If you're wondering what a perfect output looks like, this is a perfect output for me. So for this pair, I'm not sure which section this pair is from, but this pair was assigned literature. So as you can see in here, they were studying William Shakespeare's King Lear. So even if they included a summary, or they included backbone to the whole narrative, or to the whole infographic, the elements are actually there. So what are the elements that they studied? There is theater, there is point of view, there is setting, there is theme, there is plot. So okay yon, because these are the different elements, and even the characters. So even if the author is not really an element, but it adds a little bit of like a flavor, or a little bit of information or extra detail that will make that will make the infographic work as a standalone item. Many of you, for example, what you did was just focus more into the trivia, discuss the author, how much did the artwork sell, or how much did it go for, who are the people who liked it, for example, which is not really an element. So for example, there's also another class, I forgot to download the infographic. There's this pair, they were assigned dance. So they introduced the Jabberwockies, for example, and then they commented about space, how they use their space, how they are positioned. They talk about their movement. They talk about their choreography. These are elements of dance. At the same time, meron ding isang pair. Their work was they were assigned fashion design. So for the fashion design, what they did was to compare it with the other pairs. The other pairs, what they did was feature the dress, but or the fashion statement, but they just gave trivia, even like how much does it sell. Although these are good details or data, the idea here is supposed to be for you to show the elements. So what are the elements of fashion design? You talk about the color, you talk about the material or the materiality, di ba? Is it made of polyester? Is it made of cotton? Is it a sustainable material, for example? There was also one pair who did okay, ito mas common. So there was one who did, there is a pair, most pairs actually did the lava gown by Catriona Gray. So um if you did the Catriona Gray lava dress or the lava gown, there was a pair who was more focused into how it was made, and who was the designer, and how was it worn in Miss Universe. However, the idea in here was not actually to talk about that. The idea was to talk about the elements. So what are the elements supposed to be for the lava dress or the lava gown? The color that it represents the lava. That's why it's fiery and it's red, and it has a very strong statement color. The cut, for example, so you can talk about the balance. It's not a symmetric balance, but you can see that there was a zigzag around the chest area, and then you can see that not everything that's on the left is also on the right. So it's an asymmetric dress. So that's an example of element. So please be careful with your next outputs. Instructions are very important, as I have been discussing with you. So you try to focus more into what we've been talking about and what are the instructions before you start your project. Okay, so we're now moving on to the last part of our slides for the subjects of art. So last time I introduced you to the idea of representative or representational art. So this one is realistic, it's realism. What you see is what you get. We can talk about the things that are in the painting or in the artwork. So if I tell you that this is a portrait, all of you can see that it is a portrait. If I tell you that she's holding a basket of mangoes, you can see the basket of mangoes there. There's no debate. You cannot tell me, no, that's a basket of watermelon, because that's not what we call a watermelon. Okay, so that's representational art. Also, I ask you to delineate between the ideas of abstract and abstraction. So this is an abstract and this is an abstraction. Okay, so be careful with this. This is a very important. There's a divide that is very important to take note of. Not everything that we see, which is made of swerves and lines and a blast of color, is what you call an abstract painting. Okay, it's probably an abstraction. So we know that it's an abstraction because even if real humans, real limbs, real muscles or blood or bruises look this way in real life, we understand that they are that one. So it's an abstraction of what the real thing looks like. So this time for our for our first session for the midterm story and the closing for the first grading topic, I want to discuss with you the different methods of representing art subjects. So these are different ways that we create abstractions. What are the different ways that artists come up with ideas for their artworks? So for realism is technically based on the idea of photography. So when you talk about photography, you just take a snap of it, and whatever you see there is what's going to translate on your photograph later on. Okay, so it's like taking a selfie. But of course, when you're taking a filter, that's a question I would have asked you in a synchronous session. Do you think that in our synchronous session, Do you think that when you take a selfie and then you slap on a filter that it's an abstraction? The idea is, for me, yes, because um filters are not really what it is. It's not really an objective reality. So filters, I'm not, for example, I'm not wearing a filter right now, but in a way for you to correct how it looks like and how to make it more presentable, like you add more lighting, and then you have to be very careful where you position yourself. Of course, that in a way is like tweaking or being in control of what you look like. It's already like creating an abstraction of who you really are. But there are a lot of creases, there are a lot of like wrinkles around and everything. But there are many ways to correct that, or not really to correct, but to sort of change or modify how it looks like once it translates on video or photo. So it's the same idea here, right? Like the idea of realism is that it's against emotionalism. Okay, so when you talk about realism, it's something like La Ponseur or The Thinker by Auguste Rodin. Some of you included this, the pairs who were assigned sculpture for their work. I've seen some of you present La Ponseur or The Thinker by Rodin. So in Rodin's work, you can see here a man sitting down. This is a favorite representation for philosophers. So there are plentiful philosophy books, philosophy modules, philosophy slides where they feature The Thinker by Auguste Rodin. So it shows you from the title itself a person sitting down thinking, and as you can see from the body positioning to the way that his limbs are designed, everything is very realistic. So you can see in here you can see the muscles. It's like when you flex your arm, right? Like you can see some cuts along your arms, for example. You can also see them here in the sculpture. And of course, whatever is the size of a leg and the size of a foot or the size of an arm and the size of fingers, you can all see them here properly and faithfully depicted in the sculpture. So this is what we call realism. Of course, there are other ways also that we represent realism, but in a way they're sort of abstraction, or they are depicted by artists in a different way that is similar or that is true to their style or to their form. So you can see here Barong Barong by Vicente Silva Manansala in 1970. This is a watercolor on paper. As I've said to you last time, if you're using paper as a material, there is light that naturally emanates at the back, or it's naturally conducive to light. So it adds this natural light setting to the artwork. And as you can see here in Manansala's painting, the Barong Barong depicts the it's not really a squatters area, but you can see the house is from the word itself or the title itself, Barong Barong. So you can see that it's a makeshift building. It's made from scraps, or it's made from odds and ends of other things like corrugated steel and plywood and sacks probably, and they were put together to build a shelter. And this is very common here in the Philippines as well as other Asian countries. You can see that this is very realistic. So there's no tweaking, there's no sugar coating. This is really what it looks like. It also emanates this idea of poverty, of even sadness and melancholy. The poignancy that you can see in the painting represents how Filipinos live. Okay, so this is there's nothing romantic about the painting, even if the colors are in bright red, bright blue, and it looks like a beautiful day if you look at the painting actually, but there's nothing really beautiful about it. There's nothing really happy about it. Now, the opposite of realism is abstraction. So I discussed this with you already. When you say abstraction, it comes from the Latin abstractus, or from the past participle of it, which is abstrahire. And ab or abs. In some books, I've discovered that it's actually abse. It means go away or go out of it. And if you put it together with the word trahire is more onto drawing or like pulling it out. So it's like you pull it out and you take it away. So it becomes a different thing, or it becomes a different dynamic. Okay. So it's the total opposite of realism, because you can romanticize it. Okay. You can change the idea about it. So, or maybe, in another way of saying, the idea is actually there. Nandoon siya. So, it's standing there, you can see it, but it's not actually what it looks like in real life. A best example will be, as I've presented to you last time, this is Sonia Delaunay's 1914 Electric Prisms, Oil on Canvas. So they were walking down the street in Paris. And of course, Paris is the city of lights. If you've ever been to Session Road, I've never been to Paris, so let's just use Session Road as a sample. Okay, so if you've been to the Session Road, there are a lot of lights there as well. Kasi everything is open, like the marquees and the street lights and even the traffic lights, for example. All of the lights are all blasting at the same time. Now, when the lights come out, and it rained, okay, so it's a rainy afternoon or evening, you look down and then you can see on the puddle of water, light being reflected from the marquees and the traffic lights and the street lights and other kinds of lights there. And it's a beautiful sight kasi makikita mo yung ilaw doon sa baba. And water, just like glass or just like a mirror, is something that naturally refracts light. Diba? It tries to break it down into smaller or to level hues or level value of color. So once the light is being dispersed, once the light hits there and the color is being dispersed, you can like see the breakdown of the color, and that's what you are seeing now in electric prisms. So you can see the two circles interlapping. Parang yan din yung circle na nasa taas ng lights na na-reflect doon sa tubig na nakita ni Sonia Delaunay and her husband. Her husband is also an artist. So when she saw that, Delaunay is also a big fan of tapestry. It's tapestry is like putting different cloth together in a creative and very aesthetic and vibrant way. And you can, if you look at electric prisms, there are a lot of ideas that comes in here. It's a color study. What's also good about color study is when you put a light color beside a dark color, the dark color will lighten up, and vice versa. If you put a light color just like this beside the dark color, it sort of darkens the whole thing. So there's a beautiful dynamic that goes between colors, like the way that you dress, for example, like if you wear this is not pink, this is salmon. So when you put a salmon dress, for example, with a salmon shirt with blue jeans, for example, that's quite dark, it tries to offset each other. So the pants will sort of look brighter because your shirt is already very bright to begin with, or your shirt can also become darker if the lower part of your body is dressed in a darker color, because it will overpower the lighter color of the salmon on top of it. So that's actually interesting about if you want to study how clothing is worn, you can watch fashion shows, or you can watch pageants, for example. So for example, when I help out with pageants in the University of Baguio, because we handle Miss UB during face-to-face, you can see there that that's where I discovered that they actually wear nude heels. And they wear, if you watch pageants, most of them, they wear nude heels, like color of the skin pareho ng kulay ng kanilang mga paa o kanilang mga legs, because they want the legs to look longer. So that's color complement. But they want to wear something that's more striking, or that will go against their skin color. So for example, darker contestants will wear something like a bright salmon or a bright yellow, compared to someone who is like Catriona Gray, who is very maputi. Diba? So she's very light-skinned, fair. It's not even fair. She's really light-skinned. She her features will pop out if she wears something beautiful as a red striking dress. And the same way that Pia Gutierrez, who is morena, siyang fair-skinned, wore something that's bright blue. Okay? So that's color complementary. So it's the same idea with Bird in Space. This is by Constantine Brancusi, a very famous work. When you were younger, you did not probably know this, but you are actually abstract artist. So why are you abstract artists when you were kids? Because you do know that birds fly, birds are graceful, they look lithe, and then they look really beautiful when they're in the sky. And then you draw this, diba? To represent them. So you use this like a curvature of a small m because you want to show the wings, you want to depict the wings, you want to depict the flight, you want to depict the gracefulness. And this is already a good example of abstraction. So bata pa kayo, abstract artist na pala kayo, di ba? So it's the same way here. This is by Constantine Brancusi. You can see that even if at first sight, I show you this and you're like, Ian, I do not know what this is. So what do you think? So you would probably say, I don't know, is it a trophy? Is it a furniture, or is it like, I don't know, like is it a pen? But actually it isn't. It's a, if I tell you the title that it's Bird in Space, you'll probably be like, okay, I get it. It looks smooth, it looks like something that really flies, something that's graceful. So even if it doesn't look like a bird, as it says here, it is supposed to convey an impression of a bird's grace and speed. That's why it is an abstraction. Okay, so there are different forms of abstraction. We're going to introduce you here with distortion, and we can understand more of abstractions by using a master of abstraction himself, and that is Pablo Picasso. So Picasso is the most dominant and influential artist of the first half of the 20th century. So he is a very influential artist. Not only did he dabble himself into paint, he also went for sculpture, even ceramics, and other kind of artwork. So that's how very experimentative he is, how creative he is, how imaginative he is. He doesn't want to be contained like, I'll just do this because I'm good at this. Ang dami niyang ginawa. So he was able to like go to different forms, different medium, different subjects in order for him to understand how to properly depict or creatively depict a certain subject. So of course, as you can remember from the cover of our slides for this session, this is Silhouette by Picasso. I already told you the story. Let's look at different ways that he created abstraction. So the first one is what you call distortion. So when you say distortion, you're going to like misshape something. So there's a regular size for everything. These are the regular size of my fingers. This is the regular size of my face. This is the regular size of my shoulders. But when you create a painting and you want to create an abstraction of it using distortion, the regular sizes are tweaked, or they are modified a little bit. So you can see in here, the old guitarist is depicted in a different way. It's no longer the correct proportion, or it's not really the regular proportion of a body. You can see that one side of him, a shoulder of him is like hunched higher than the rest of his body. It's like his body is lopsided or larger on one side. And then you can see that his fingers are way longer than a regular person would have. And they look spidery even. They look very long and thin and almost creepy. And then you can see that his limbs are unnaturally long. So at a point, this is actually based on a friend of Picasso whose name is Casagemas. But in a way, when you look at it, even if you do not know anything about Casagemas, it already depicts from the color, from the sad color of the blue, you can already get a poignancy about it, a poverty and the sadness about it. Okay? So that is Pablo Picasso. Once you look into the painting, it's quite scary, like a Frankenstein monster even, right? Even the face is quite long, but it gives you this idea of distorted person that depicts this person in poverty. Okay, another way is elongation, and a master of that is Modigliani. Modigliani is one of the peers of Picasso. This is Head, 1910 to 1912. Modigliani is very known for his for very long things, like long neck, long chin. So he likes to elongate his subjects. Okay, the other one is mangling. So when you say mangle, it's like you present something in a way that is not commonly presented. Okay, so you can lacerate, you can tear it apart, you can mutilate the subject, you can disfigure the subject. Well, on work, not in person, but on the work itself. So you can cut out certain parts of it. So mangling, for example, is the Weeping Woman. This is by Pablo Picasso. The Weeping Woman is based on the Weeping Woman, of course, is an anti-war painting, part of Picasso's series of of Weeping Woman paintings, and he wanted to show in here, or he wanted to depict the image of a woman who is at the center of a war. So they are the ones who are grieving, they are the ones who are on the fringes, sorry, waiting for news about their probably sons or husbands or lovers or um family members who are out in the war. So you can see that there is sadness and the grief into the painting, and it's depicted also by the use of bright colors that doesn't do anything to make it look vibrant or happy, but you can see in the middle that the colors changed or shifted from something that's bright and happy to something that is quite sad and something that's quite gloomy. The shift in color is seen in her handkerchief, in her mouth, that shows this despair or anguish. Okay, so it's mutilated. It's like they even cut a portion of her face, because this is what a face looks like when it's on a side view, right? Which is supposed to be what the subject is supposed to look like in this painting. But it's like they cut this portion of her face and then they pull it on this side, so it already looks like her face is flat, even if she's on a certain or presented in a particular angle. So this is the Weeping Woman. Okay. Another one is Cubism, which is of course very famous because of Picasso. But please remember that it was not only Picasso who started Cubism. So Picasso is Spanish, and he's friends with this French artist named Georges Braque. And Georges Braque is, you Google the Portuguese by Georges Braque. This is one of his best Cubist work. And they both experimented on this idea that we get to know now as Cubism. So it's about the use of geometric shapes to show different or multiple viewpoints of a particular image or subject. So this is one of the earlier works, if not the earliest work in exhibit by Pablo Picasso for Cubism. This is Les Damoiselles d'Avignon, or the Ladies of Avignon. So this is oil on canvas. It depicts the 5 women. These are actually 5 prostitutes in the streets of Avignon, and you can see that 3 of them were painted. That the 3 were painted with masks, and then you can see that they're all naked, and they were depicted in different ways or different viewpoints. So even it's not just the side view or the full frontal, but you can see that it's like looking at one image through different glasses, or it's like a diamond and there are different portions that you can see about it. Okay, you compare this with his later works, which is already when he mastered the art of Cubism. So this is Girl Before a Mirror, very beautiful painting. If you want to get to know more about it, you go to MoMA or you can Google it. There are many video analysis of this on YouTube. They are all very interesting. So this is Girl Before a Mirror by Picasso. You can see a woman looking at her reflection in a mirror, and there are a lot of dualities that you can study from here. Okay, so this idea of time, like looking at the present and looking at something maybe in the future, or looking at something in the past, we are not really sure. So there are a lot of things to talk about in this painting. Another way is abstract expressionism. I sort of introduced this to you already before in our previous session. So when you talk about abstract expressionism, it's about feelings and emotions. So we talked about Pollock, who is one of the artists under abstract expressionism. The idea here is not really about what kind of output or what kind of artwork do I want to happen, but how do I do the artwork? So what's the process of building or creating this artwork? That's the more important question here. Okay, so it's not what matters for the artist are the qualities of the paint itself, not the act of painting itself. So this is a very these are very huge paintings, very large ones. This is Mural by Pollock, 1943. This is oil and cassine on canvas. For symbolism, it's of course from the word itself, it's more subjective rather than objective, and it is also conventional. So for example, it's supposed to intensify or to iterate a certain meaning. So a good example that I want to introduce you with is Paul Gauguin's 1889 painting, The Yellow Christ. I have a very few there are a few paintings that I love where I can see Jesus Christ on it. I'm actually Catholic, I'm a Christian, so I'm very particular with how I want to like understand, or I want the Lord to be painted. So This is one of the few that I really like. The other one I will show later. This one is the Yellow Christ. If you look at this is actually set in fall in a provincial area in France. And you can see Breton women sitting down and Jesus in the midst of it. And what I like most about it is that it reminds me also of the Cordilleras where I am right now, where UB is. You know, the rolling the mountains, the rolling hills, the beautiful scenery, the trees, and even if we are more of a green or a verdant area, this area in here which is fall has orange and yellow and all of the hues in between. And despite the very provincial setting, you can see the faithfulness, or you can see how religious the women look like. And it also reminds one of the Angelus, the prayers that are said from, well, if you believe in the Virgin Mary, the angel of the Lord declared unto Mary, and she conceived with the power of the Holy Spirit. Behold, the handmaid of the Lord, may it be done to me according to your word. Diba? I remember that. So parang ganun to. The Angelus kasi is a prayer that is said at 6 a.m., at 6 p.m., and at 12 noon. And when this happens, they're going to, in some provinces especially, like in our province, they will play the bell, or they will sound the bell, and everyone will stop whatever they're doing at 12 noon, 6 a.m., and 6 p.m., and they are going to pray the Angelus. And it's the same thing as you can see in here. It's like they're praying the Angelus. They are, even if Jesus is not really there technically, but you can see that Jesus symbolizes the faith. And then the women, the Breton women who are sitting down to pray, represent this kind of faithfulness that we have, even if we do not really see our God, whoever your God is. As long as your faith is in there, it's there. Okay, it's palpable, it's something that you can feel, something that you can feel. Okay, so another, of course, very famous is our amazing work, our own Juan Luna, who produced this stunning work called the Spolarium. Very wonderful painting. It represents, or it depicts, the hardships and the brutality that was experienced by the Filipinos during that period. Okay, so of course you already know that gladiators are people who are set to fight, and they are put together to fight each other. And in Spolarium you can see that the gladiators who are killed represent the Filipinos, and the ones who are viewing it for entertainment purposes are the Spaniards. You can even see in here very interesting details, like the woman who is hunched here on one side, probably crying or grieving over her loved one. These images that look like friars even. So very, very wonderful painting, very huge one, and there are a lot of things to talk about with this artwork. There's also Fauvism. Fauvism started, of course, by Henri Matisse. It started with Woman with a Hat, or Femme au Chapeau, in 1905. This is oil on canvas. If you're wondering where the word Fauvism comes from, it comes from the word les fauves. So when when Matisse had an exhibit and he presented his artworks, critics did not really like it. So they looked at these bright colors and they thought this is childish, or it doesn't translate as art. They don't like it. And so they said, this is not art. Binaboy niyo ang art. They said, you are beasts, because art is supposed to be beautiful. And here you are creating something as weird as this. So they called Matisse, and they called the other artists that came after him fauves, diba? Mga baboy, beasts. You are the ones who destroyed art. So as a way to empower themselves, they said, okay, you called us beasts, so we are going to become beasts. So they called their movement, or they called their art, Fauvism. Okay, so they were called as fauve. So as it says in here, to a fauvist, a tree trunk need not to become brown. It can be other colors like a bright red, purple, or other colors. Okay, so this is his wife. Dadaism, of course, comes from the word dada, which means hobby horse. And in some way, it is nonsensical, because it's supposed to be a cultural movement against the barbarism of the war. So it's a reaction to the outward traditions of art that's supposed to be, that's supposed to be photographic, it's supposed to be like this and like that. So the Dadaists, they came in and they said, you know what? There's a war that's happening that doesn't make sense. It's very barbaric. let's do something like that's going to make them think as well. So you can see here, this is by Max Ernst, The Elephant Celebs. So you can see in here a broiler that looks like an elephant and other details. Okay, so that's Dadaism. Futurism, on the other hand, is about speed, technology, and violence. So it's about the technological future era. So if you look at this one by Gino Severini, 1912, Oil and Sequins on Sculpted Gesso on Artist Canvas Board, Dancer at Pigalle, you're probably wondering, sir, how does this become technological or futurism when there's no technology embedded into it? Well, there's an interesting story about this. What is interesting about Dancer at Pigalle? If you look at this, there are 4 different viewpoints actually. So these are 4 spotlights, and there is a dancer in the middle. And then the dancer, you can see like the dress is being cut into different parts. It's like she's really dancing and she's flipping it around. You can see the dancer in 4 different viewpoints. Galing, di ba? It's like one photo, but it's 3D. You can see her from this side, that side, this side, this side. And then she's dancing and you can see the flap of her dress moving at different intervals or at different times, all at the same time. So it was all captured in one painting. It's like four images or four angles of the dancer captured in one painting. And that's very futuristic. It's like in the future, like you can see something perform not on one side but on all around it. Okay, so that's how futuristic this painting is. Surrealism, on the other hand, is from the word, of course, superrealism, to make ordinary things look extraordinary, like Men Shall Know Nothing of This by Max Ernst, 1923, Oil on Canvas. You can see the hermaphrodite feet, and then you can see the or lower extremity, sorry, and then you can see a lot of details in this painting. Superrealism is meant to focus on real things found in the imagination or fantasy. Okay, so these are like dreamlike images. So there are 2 types of surrealism. One is veristic surrealism. It allows the images of the subconscious to be undisturbed so that the meaning will be understood through analysis. So veristic, like here in Dali's Salvador Dali's The Persistence of Memory in 1931, if you look at this painting, it's easy to understand it to analyze it because all of the elements are undisturbed. It's just there, you just sit down and then you go over it and then you can analyze it or ruminate about it. This is Salvador Dali, very well known for his mustache. Fun. And then you can see here also automatism. Pag automatism naman, images of the subconscious should not be burdened by meaning. So what is there, you already get it from the first look. So The Face of War by Dali, I like this painting to depict war because even if you zoom in on it or zoom out of it, it's the same thing. It's an ugly, crying face. There's nothing beautiful about it. It's terrible. It's not a good thing, war, diba? Pangit ang gera. It's not a very nice thing. So there are different surrealistic techniques that we can learn. Scaling, make it large, make it small. Levitation, for you to make it fly. Juxtaposition, you put 2 things together in an impossible combination, like there's a car running and on top of it is a horse. I don't know if you've watched Coldplay music videos, but Coldplay music videos are surrealistic in a way, in many ways. Dislocation, you put something and then you put it in a place where it's not supposed to be or unfamiliar, like you get the toaster or you get the oven and then you put it on the car. Transparency, you make something transparent, and the first transformation, you change an object in an unusual way. So this is my another favorite Jesus painting. This is Crucifixion by Salvador Dali in 1954. Instead of I like this because Jesus is not bleeding. I like this painting because I don't like to see Jesus bleeding. I know he sacrificed himself for people, for us, but it's also nice to see him in a painting where he's living peacefully. And I got that idea from this because you can see him behind him is a tesseract. You can see someone below him praying, and instead of him being nailed to the cross, you can see that he is levitating, and it gives this peaceful feeling of his suffering, that he's going home. Really, he is not leaving with difficulty, but he is leaving and going home gracefully and peacefully. The elephants, you can see here juxtaposition, no, even scaling, very large legs for this mammoth that look skeleton-like, and then there's a very small thing there that looks like a pagoda and other figures. So, eto yung scaling na sinasabi. Okay? So Impressionism, the last one, is optical realism. We use color, light, and movement to depict something. So if you look at, it started with, the word Impressionism start with Impression, Sunrise by Claude Monet, 1872, oil on canvas. This is of course sunrise. And as the sun is rising, you can see there the blood-like color of the sun going up. And then it's being reflected by lines and color. Diba? So it's like, there's a reflection that's happening, and Monet depicts that with the use of color and the use of lines to show this movement. So ang ganda. Okay, so that's Impression Sunrise. So the first work of the movement was that one. There's a fascination of color, light, and movement. And of course, what's the word I'm looking for? They were concerned with the visual impressions aroused by those objects. So it's like your eyes are, your eyes are blurry. It's blurry because your eyes are not looking well. So it's like moving and others. Okay, so that's the end of it. All right, so that ends our session. I'm going to be seeing you next week for your synchronous session. Just turn in your the recording was longer than 30 minutes. I'm sorry, but just turn in your outputs. Just whatever notes you have after listening for this session, you scan it or take a photo of it, or you save it as PDF or Word file, and then send it to me in Google Classroom for your attendance. I'll see you guys next week. Work on your letter to my post-pandemic self, and I'll see you soon. Bye everyone. You take care.